Today, I have a simple question for you. Do you know the purpose of your book? You may know why you want to write it, but do you know why your readers should actually want to read it? What is in it for them? In today's video, you're going to discover the three main purposes that your book can have and why you need to know exactly what yours is in order to be effective at writing it and marketing it. Hey y'all, welcome to a new Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa and I create videos that help you to write and live God's way. If you're looking to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. And I also want to acknowledge that we are partnering with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is a wonderful ministry that is started and founded by my dear friend, Tori Slaughter, that helps you to grow in your walk with God. So not only are we live every week here with Live with Lisa on YouTube and on Instagram, but we are also live on the Our Given Purpose Ministries Facebook page as well. So make sure that you're connecting to that ministry and that you are growing in your walk there. So I just want to let you know today that we are talking about, as I said, the purpose of your book. And so it is important for you to know what the purpose of your book is so that you can be effective in how you write and market it. And can be intentional throughout the writing process. There's a lot for you to keep in mind. And so we're going to dive right in terms of talking about the three different purposes that your book can have. So purpose number one is to educate. Purpose number one, the first purpose your book can have is to educate. Now, this is exactly what it sounds like. These are books that teach people how to do something. They share information that people might not know. They just inform them about different things. It's books that really help people and bring solutions to them and help them to do things that they weren't able to do before. And so a lot of your nonfiction books are going to fall into this category. Most nonfiction books, for the most part, are going to fall into this category, but it can also include some fiction books as well. An example that I like to give is with historical fiction in particular. If you read a good historical novel, you will probably find that you will learn different things about the time period where the novel is set, and it will really kind of inform you on that time period. One of my favorite historical novels that I've read is called Code Name Verity. Came out a few years back, but it is an amazing young adult novel that is talking a lot about female pilots during World War II. And so I learned a lot about that topic as I was reading that book. And so there's a lot of different examples of books like that where if it's a historical novel, you're still learning and you're still being educated in the process of reading it. So I want you to understand that books that educate can be both nonfiction books, and they tend to be for the most part, but they can also be fiction. And so when you're thinking about what type of book you're writing, this is going to include things like your self-help books and personal development books in particular. But it can also include memoirs. It can also include, different books about science and even cookbooks and different books about food and health and all kinds of things. So make sure you're keeping that in mind as you're writing your book, whatever book that is, that if you are teaching people something, if you're explaining something to them and giving them information, that you need to be aware that your book is educational and understand that readers should be approaching it from that perspective and should be expecting to learn something new from reading your book. So that's the first type of purpose a book can have. One thing before I go further, I want to, emphasize that with all of these different purposes, there can be some overlap. So your book can have more than one of these. And really, ideally, it's great if it can have all three. It doesn't have to, but in order for your book to be effective, you want it to have at least one of these purposes, because it's really something that is going to cause it to resonate with your readers if it has one of these. So as I said, the first one is to educate. Tori says, I love this topic. I am glad to hear that. I hope that this is helpful for you all. So the second purpose that your book can have is to entertain. to entertain. Now, a lot of fiction books fall into this category. If you think about when you pick up a fiction book, if you want to read a novel, for example, most of the time you're looking to be entertained. You're looking for a good time. You're looking to enjoy it, right? You might want to get swept up in a good mystery, or maybe you're looking for a summer beach read where, maybe a contemporary novel, or maybe you want to get swept up in a good romance or a fantasy or whatever fiction book you're looking at. You're usually looking for something you can enjoy. You're looking for a good story. And many times people read because they want to escape from whatever they're going through at the time. But regardless, you are looking to be entertained on some level when you're reading fiction for the most part. Most people are not going to open, even if it's a book that has science in it, they're probably not looking to, go through a bunch of scientific theory and all of that unless it's part of the plot in some way, right? At the end of the day, your readers are looking for a good story. Now, it's important to understand that nonfiction can be entertaining as well. Fiction tends to be, people tend to pick up fiction and want to read it specifically to be entertained, but they also are kind of looking to be entertained from nonfiction as well in a more indirect way. They may want to learn something, as we talked about earlier, when they want to be educated, but a lot of people want to be entertained in the process. No one wants to read something that's really dry and boring and doesn't have any life to it. And so if you can bring some kind of entertaining element to the book that you're writing, if you're writing something that is more educational, that just makes it better. It causes the book to have more appeal for your readers if you can bring some kind of element that will cause them to enjoy the ride and cause them to enjoy the story, right? That's why you'll find that a lot of self-help books or personal development books, they tend to have stories in them, right? If they're written by some type of an expert in their field, it will be they'll include personal stories from their own lives or from lives of the people that they've worked with. They might share success stories that they've experienced and seen as a way of bringing people in, as a way of helping them to be entertained on some level, right? It just makes it more engrossing and more interesting for readers to get pulled into the book. And so it really works well when these two things go together, when we have the educational element and the entertainment element as well. So again, something to be mindful of, especially if you are, maybe a small business owner, or like a coach, or you're a services provider, and you're looking to write a book that is, you're trying to reach potential clients with your book. You want to look for ways to bring in those elements, those storytelling elements that will make your book more interesting for readers. It's good to want to educate them. It's good to want to inform them. But if you can make the book interesting and entertaining as well, you're going to get that much further along in the process of bringing in your readers. So really important to keep that in mind. All right, let's stop for comments for a second. Tori says, that's so good. I struggled to accept my workbooks were educating. I know, bless my heart. Yeah, it's great to recognize that and acknowledge that, because you want to make sure that you embrace that. If you want to educate your readers, and that's the really the driving force behind what you're producing, and that's important to know, because you want to make that clear in the process of writing it and marketing it, so that you can set expectations. That's really huge for readers. They need to know what they're getting into when they read, because one of the things that can frustrate a reader the most is if they go in to a book expecting one thing and they get something else. A lot of the frustration that you'll see, and a lot of those 1-star reviews that you'll see on Amazon and Goodreads and places like that, are because readers were expecting one thing and they got something else. And that can really cause a lot of frustration. So you want to set those clear expectations by knowing what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish ahead of time. It's really important. And Tori says, I believe this really goes really well with the truth you spoke a few weeks ago, which was being ready to share your expertise and be authoritative in your approach, even in the writing process. Yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Tori. I appreciate that. Yeah, it is so important for you to be knowledgeable about what you're trying to do in the writing process, to have that authority, to have that confidence, and to have a clear vision early on in the writing process. You don't want to wait until the very end of writing and to right before your book is about to be published to know what you're trying to say and who you're trying to reach. Because honestly, that's really a part of the marketing process. Is you market throughout the process of talking about who you're trying to reach, who you're trying to connect with, and really telling the story of what your book, the themes in your book, and what you're really trying to share with the world. And it's a great way to connect with readers early on, not just immediately before the book is published. So you want to have that clear vision as early on in the writing process as possible. Absolutely. And so we talked about education, we talked about entertainment as far as the purpose of your book. And then lastly, and I love this one, lastly, your book can have the purpose of encouragement or motivation. I actually like the word motivation better, but I wanted to keep it to the third E there. I wanted to have all of them start with E just to help you remember. But encouragement and inspiration, motivation, that is the third purpose that your book can have. And just like it sounds, these are books that can really just encourage people, uplift them, and really help them to think differently about things. So both nonfiction and fiction books can fall into this category. These are books that, there's a variety of different books that can be encouraging and motivational in some way. And this, some books may come to mind a little bit more naturally. Things like your self-help and your personal development books, a lot of people assume, and really, of course, literally inspirational books that are in that category. A lot of people assume that those books are motivational, that they are encouraging. And so they're already familiar with that. But really, a lot of different books can be motivational as well, even outside of those categories. For example, a lot of memoirs have a motivational and encouragement element to them. One book that I read a little while ago that stands out to me is called "Nothing Is Missing" by Nicole Walters. She's an entrepreneur and has had a lot of success in the business world, and she wrote about her life and her experiences growing up and how she came into this success in business and life. And so there is this kind of motivational tone to the book in terms of how she talks about the struggles she went through, and then how she endured and what she learned from the process, and coming into this message that some things are hard, other things are great, but nothing is missing. And so even thinking through the title and what that book was about, there's a very much an inspirational, a motivational, encouraging tone to the book. And a lot of memoirs are that way. There is this message that is supposed to inspire and supposed to challenge people in a way and encourage them. Now, at the same time, books in these categories don't always have to inspire feel-good emotions. Honestly, sometimes they can actually provoke people to anger and push them to want to demand change. If we think about this, there's a lot of stories out there like this where you have books that are really challenging to a lot of people and can make them even uncomfortable in the message that they give. But that's really done on purpose. They're designed to be provocative. They're designed to challenge people's thinking and challenge their assumptions. A lot of political books are really in this vein, if we're being honest. Books that may talk about the environment, for example, and are pushing people to really get fired up about that and wanting to make changes. That's just an example, but there are a lot of books out there that are like that, and that can really, you don't necessarily come away from them feeling happy and you're not necessarily feeling great in terms of a positivity, but you are feeling inspired to change. You are feeling motivated to do something different. You are feeling like your perspective has been changed and that you have been experienced transformation. And so they were successful in that way and in that goal, because their goal was to challenge you to think differently. And so I want you to think outside the box in terms of what motivation motivational and encouraging books can be, because they're not always going to be feel good, and that is okay. It's important for you to be intentional with your own book, with the work that you are doing. And especially for my kingdom writers, what God is calling us to do, we need to recognize that these are some of the things that we need to, the purpose of our books that we need to be intentional about and think through what that really looks like. We can even look at Jesus and his ministry in the Bible and how people responded to him. While he certainly, ministered to people and encouraged people and inspired people, there were a lot of people who were not happy or excited about his ministry. He was polarizing in many ways. He was a polarizing figure. And so people either loved or hated his message, right? It was very controversial in a lot of ways. And so what we need to recognize as kingdom writers is that can be a byproduct of the work that we do. We don't need to go out necessarily chasing controversy or trying to be controversial or trying to be polarizing. But the gospel message can definitely be a controversial message in many ways. It can be polarizing because it requires you to choose. It requires you to take a stand. And so that's something that we need to think through and recognize, especially as kingdom writers, when we write and when we think through what it is that we are, how we're reaching our readers and what they can expect when they pick up the books that we write. So really important to think through that. One more point I want to make is as along these lines is knowing the purpose of your book is so critical because it helps you stay focused during the writing process and after you publish. When you're thinking through the message that you're writing, what you're saying to your readers, how you want to reach your readers, it is important for you to stay focused on what your reader needs and wants rather than what you want to give them. It is critical, I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. It is critical for you to focus on what your reader wants and needs, and instead of what you want to give them. And especially if we are submitted to God and thinking as kingdom writers about what he is trying to speak and write through us, we need to be thoughtful about how the message that we're writing is going to be received and what the purpose behind it is, because all books are not the same and all books cannot do the same thing. And so again, when we think through the different purposes that we discussed today, you need to ask yourself, which one does my book fall into? Right? Which category does it fall into? Does it fall into more than one? Does it fall into all three? Can I frame it in such a way that it does fall into more than one or all three? And is that something that I should do? Is that something that I should pursue? So this is really important to think through and be clear about early on in the writing process, and to ask yourself that. So I'm going to kind of give that to you as homework. I want you to think through with your own work in progress that you're working on, what purpose does that book have, or purposes? Does it fall into more than one category? And if you're not sure, I want you to ask yourself, how do you think your audience will feel when they're reading the book that you're writing? What do you think their response to it will be? What expectations will they have going into it? Again, if you're writing a memoir, for example, are they looking for that motivational element? Are they looking to be inspired? Are they looking to be entertained in some way? Are they looking to learn? What is it how are you bringing in those elements, and how can you be effective at reaching your readers through those different ideas and through those different techniques? Really important for you to think through that. All right, let's go through comments. Yeah, Tori says it's the amouch moments that invites transformation. Yes, that is amen and ouch at the same time. Absolutely. Yes, it can. It absolutely. There is the moment where we want to say amen because we relate to the message. We relate to what's being said as readers, but there is also the ouch where it's uncomfortable. It's the uncomfortable truth. And that can be polarizing in the books that God calls us to write. Absolutely. But we don't have to shy away from that because we have the Holy Spirit that makes us bold and allows us to declare what God has given us to say. So We don't need to be afraid of it, but we can recognize that sometimes that's a part of the process. Sometimes there is that discomfort and that challenging people and causing change in that way. So absolutely. So if you found this video helpful today, if it encouraged you, if it challenged you and taught you something new, and you want to learn more about how to write and live God's way, let's make this a regular thing. Go ahead and subscribe now to the channel. Make sure you like and leave a comment as well. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know what you are interested in learning about in terms of the writing process. Let me know what your questions are and what you may need to, what you want to talk about as far as your own writing projects. I would love to hear what you're working on and just what your purpose of your book is. So definitely let me know that. And yeah, I'm excited to continue to share with you all. So I will be here next week for the next Live with Lisa. Once again, my name is Lisa. I am grateful that you joined me today, whether you're watching live or on the replay. And until next time, take care and God bless. Bye, y'all.